history in a friendly, neighborly manner 24/7, 365 or 366 days a year. This is History Hefner and my usual accoutrements. I've got a nice shirt and tie on. Formal wear is what we are doing usually on the live stream lectures, and I've got my smoking jacket. It's not too hot for me to wear my famous dressing gown, my smoking jacket that transforms me from just your friendly neighborhood history channel into History Hefner. And History Hefner is ready to answer all of your questions related to history, social studies, and the like for the next hour, as we do every Friday and Saturday, usually at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We did do a little bit of that earlier today, but due to some schedule obligations, I had to push it back. I was only able to stream for about 10 minutes or so, so I will be bringing you about 45 minutes to 50 minutes of friendly neighborhood history right now, answering all of your questions related to history, social studies, and the like. Consider liking and subscribing if you enjoy history and social studies, and if you really want to support this channel, consider joining and becoming a member, a friendly neighborhood historian member, giving a perk of a donation, a comment, something like that. Anything helps the channel grow. All of the funds that you give help us grow the channel, grow whatever tech we have, make the channel more exciting, more interesting, and more captivating for all of you. And my long form video, which usually drops at 8 p.m. Eastern, has been delayed as well due to my schedule conflicts, but I will have that out to you tonight. So please take care. So yes, and that is some big urgent news. Israel is in shelters right now because of the Israelis are in shelters right now because of the strikes on Iran and Iran's retaliation, which has led to the activation of the Iron Dome, which is the missile defense system that keeps Israel safe from outside shelling, usually from the Iranians. And the United States has been aiding the Israelis in their retaliation and attacks and strikes on the Iranians. So a lot of people are worried that this could lead to the next World War, which I happen to believe is World War IV. Many of you are worried about the coming of World War III. So, but yes, welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History channel, where I'm here to answer all of your questions related to history, social studies, and the like, and where I will be covering, as I always do, geopolitics, past and present. And I'm still kind of divided on what to do my live stream lecture on Sunday. Maybe I'll do it on two topics. The immigration issue is obviously huge right now, and I've talked about immigration on the channel before, but it's never a bad time to talk about it, and U.S. immigration and stuff like that. And there is also, of course, the issues in the Middle East, and talking about perhaps the divisions in the Middle East and why they are the way they are is something I typically try to avoid, because this channel can get quite raucous with that. But maybe that's the topic. I still haven't figured out what our live stream lecture is, but we stream every Friday and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern for our Q&A. Ask me anything about history and social studies, and because we were delayed with it earlier, that's what we are doing right now. So if you have any questions related to history or social studies, any topics you would like me to discuss akin to that, drop it in the chat, and I'll be happy to talk about it. That's a good one, two Enlightenment eras. I don't know what the two Enlightenment eras would be, what you are specifically referring to, Horace, but that's a good topic. And Sundays is our live stream lecture, where I lecture for an hour at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But hello and welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. Horace, my wonderful moderators here. Make sure to put the social media handles, the Patreon, where you can support me there, or my Substack, where you can read my articles. Please put that in the chat so everyone can see. And Clyde, hello. Avery, hello. Welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. If you have a question or topic related to history or social studies, consider dropping it in the chat and I will answer it in a timely manner. You get to hear a historian, not just any historian, but the Friendly Neighborhood History channel, History Hefner, answer your questions related to those topics. And I am in my Hugh Hefner smoking jacket for the next 45 minutes or so answering questions. I don't reveal my personal things. People don't know my name, my background, where exactly I'm from. Yeah, I try to keep as quiet about my personal life as possible. But do I have a girlfriend? Yes, maybe no. I could talk about the two Great Awakenings. You hit blackjack on 16. It all depends on how I'm feeling. I might say hit me, I might say not. Who did 9/11? For now, I believe it was Al-Qaeda, but I'm open to other possibilities as well. First and second Great Awakenings and their impact, especially on abolishing slavery, that's a good topic as well. Is Civil War narrative by Shelby Foote worth a read? I haven't read it, so I wouldn't know for sure, but Shelby Foote is one of the most esteemed historians on the topic. And of course, I love The Civil War by Ken Burns. I'm listening to Joe Rogan's interview of him right now, and it's really good. What kind of music do I like? I mean, I play classical music all the time. I love listening to that. Typically, I tend to be a chameleon when it comes to what genre of music I enjoy the most. Classic rock, contemporary pop. I mean, I'll talk and listen to any and all of it, standards, stuff like that. So, yep, name a topic or a genre of music, and I probably listen to it or can enjoy it. I've had people quoting Snoop Dogg to me, and I've been filling out the quotes. Had people quote Eminem, and I've had people mention Mozart and Tchaikovsky, so I'm willing to roll with any of those cats. But yes, Clyde, if you love history, you're in the right place. I haven't heard of the Battle of the Dead Man. Hello, Peyton. Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate that. Chemistry, I try to be as based as possible. No, Mighty, I haven't done that in a long time. What's your opinion on alternate history books like The Guns of the South? I like historical books that give what ifs because they're historical fiction. They fill in some of the historical information we don't know, and they always posit what is fascinating, the what ifs. And a lot of historians don't like to deal in counterfactuals, but reading about it as a fun, entertaining genre is exactly that, fun and entertaining. Yeah, Wagner is a great musician. I love, what is it, Tristan and Isolde. So, talk about who invented the light bulb, Louis Latimer. Louis Latimer worked in Edison's studio, and like many of the people who worked in Edison's studio, Edison ended up getting the credit for it. So, did the Treaty of Versailles make World War II inevitable by destabilizing Germany politically and economically? Great question, Muffin. One I constantly get asked. Just a quick point of order. I consider there to be 3 world wars. The first world war would be the 7 Years' War. I have a live stream lecture and long-form video on that. Long-form videos usually drop every Monday and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here at the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. If you haven't liked and subscribed, consider doing so right now. But the Second World War to the Third World War is what I consider it to be. The Treaty of Versailles ending the Second World War, what you call World War I or the Great War, and did that set the stage for World War II or World War III or whatever you want to call it? I don't necessarily think so. I think a lot of people give too much weight into the Treaty of Versailles, and the reason they do that is not because Germany had to pay back war debt, but because Germany had to assume all the responsibility of the war. This wounded German national pride and German nationalism, and was one of the linchpins that the Nazis used to criticize other people and blame them for Germany's problems when they rose to power 15 years later. If the Nazis had risen to power in the 1920s and the war had started at the end of that decade, maybe the Treaty of Versailles would be more directly the cause of that war. But I don't think that the Treaty of Versailles made the Third World War inevitable. So, Stephen, I didn't see your question, so I'm sorry if I skipped it. Would you? Yes, please do, Clyde. I love learning about new history. I like Herodotus's form of history because oral history, learning from people, sharing their accounts and experiences, that for me is what history is all about. I mean, that's how all oral tradition began. Andrew, I think Kanye is just trying to get attention. If you had a favorite Roman emperor or public figure, which one would it be? Politically, the best emperor is Augustus, and he's my favorite emperor. I think it's incredible how he is able to avenge his uncle's death and then become the ruler of the entire world, the greatest Roman emperor maybe ever, maybe the greatest ruler or emperor ever in all of human history. When it comes to Rome has so many great public figures. Cicero is one of my favorite politicians and philosophers of that time period. Is history written by the victors? Can it really be true representation? Your thoughts? I think it's sometimes written by the victors. Modern attitudes towards history allow us to encounter histories from below and the histories of different peoples and people groups that aren't usually touted as much as they probably should be. But yeah, I think that we can rely on history because it's not the history is written by the victors, it's the narratives of history that are written by the victors. The facts are typically there and pretty indistinguishable. Or pretty reliable, but that doesn't mean that the interpretations are where it's at. That's where the big debate is. Let me see. Can you teach me English? I'm doing my best right now. If you're listening or transcribing or translating it, you're learning English. So let me see here. I don't know why people are going crazy here on the chat. Mysterio, I'm sorry, I've got to block you. That makes the chat, that clears up the chat a lot more. Thank you, Titanian. I appreciate that. What do you think of a new... Okay, I already answered that. Will there be another war? I mean, right now there's a big worry about another world war breaking out, what I would call World War IV, and that's because the United States is helping Israel attack Iran, and Iran is supported by Russia and perhaps even China. Nobody knows whether or not that will actually happen. I tend to believe that it won't. I think people are so leery of another giant conflict that the possibility of it happening seems to always diminish year by year. So we'll see what happens. Thank you, Muffin. I appreciate that. What will happen next with Iran? I really think it will escalate and tensions will get really high, and then it will collapse and another war, and a war won't happen. I do my best. Best president and why? Lincoln freed the slaves, won the Civil War. Enough said. And Harsh just put the social media handles in the chat, so please follow me there. Let me see what else. Catching up with the chat as best I can. If you have one message for the world, what will it be? What will it be? Stop killing each other. Hello, Stock. I want your opinion. Why do you think Israel wanted America to fight all of these Middle Eastern wars? I think that Israel feels that the more support they have from the U.S., the more likely they can win wars in the Middle East. The more land they can get, the more stability they can get, the more of a buffer zone they can get. Every single war that Israel has fought in has either been a preemptive strike or has been perpetuated by their enemies who have surrounded them and wanted them destroyed. They seem to have done this with Iran. We'll see if that leads to a war or not. The U.S. has helped Israel for every one of those conflicts, and Israel has won every one of those conflicts. They won the October 7th war. That war is just them hammering out the details of it now, quite literally and unfortunately. They won the Six-Day War. They won the Yom Kippur War 7 years later, and they won the Arab-Israeli War. So, if I have one message to the world: peace, love, happiness. But OP, you find it a good listener, being unique and just being kind. Yeah, people need to be peaceful, loving, and kind, and history can teach us how not to be peaceful, loving, and kind, and can teach us what happens when people are peaceful, loving, and kind. But I would like to think that the default of humanity, based off of all the history that I've studied, is unfortunately not peace, love, and kindness. So, and Keith, thank you for joining us. Originally from Greece, we have people from all kinds of wonderful areas. We have moderators from Great Britain. We have people from Norway and India and Russia and Ukraine and Palestine who join us all the time here at the Friendly Neighborhood History Channel. And they always bring such good vibes and excellent questions and ideas and topics to discuss. And if you have a topic you would like to discuss, consider dropping it in the chat. Like and subscribe if you enjoy history. To what extent is economic inequality compatible with political equality in a democratic society? Interestingly enough, we like to think that political inequality and economic inequality are parallels of each other. But political equality does not necessarily mean that economic equality will be accomplished. The Irish throughout the 19th century in the United States were politically underclass, were politically strong and robust, but that didn't make them economically strong. It did not give them the economic equality or equity or opportunity that they had wanted. So political opportunity, like Tammany Hall in New York, was an example of an Irish political mafia that held a lot of political power while many Irish people were living in slums in that very same city. Proves that political equality does not bring about economic equality. Often they're not even on the same lines at all. India-Pakistan conflict. It's kind of shut down. I mean, with Israel, Iran's the big thing now. I mean, so yeah. How is the U.S. helping Israel? The U.S. is helping Israel target and take down Iranian aircraft, which is attacking Israel with missiles right now. Al-Zawaiq Fortress was built in the late 19th century on a strategic hotspot near the river Byabrza in what is now Poland, but back then it was part of the Russian Empire. Around 800 Russians held the fort. Thank you for sharing that, Clyde. I like that story. And I'm a Russian historian, so it's always fun to learn more of Russian history. Hello, badass. Do you think we will have Trump for the full 4-year term? Yes, it's weird that I have to answer that question, but yes, we will. The Middle East has never been at war. 2,000 years, nothing will change. Oh, the Middle East have been at war for 2,000 years, nothing will change. Yes, by their own hand and by other hands as well. The German army wanted to take the fort. There was around 7,000 to 8,000 Germans. The Russian soldiers refused to surrender the fort and held strong. It kind of reminds me of when the knights at Malta were able to withstand the Ottoman forces, one of the biggest upsets in military history. And no, I am not reading off Google, but I am complimented that you think that my knowledge and information comes from that I can read it off of it because it's pretty fascinating. Yes, I know what you're referring to, Stephen. I know there's a lot of Christians who have a lot of connections between Israel and their end times philosophy and prophecies. You should do more research on Calvin Coolidge. It is worth it. He has said memorable quotes that are on moral, humble, and honest. Yes, Horace, I love Calvin Coolidge. I love reading me some Calvin Coolidge. You know, though, I'm not going to put him at the top of Mount Rushmore. What happened was on the early morning, the winds were blowing at the Russians. The Germans used the wind and let out poison gas. Interesting. The Russian soldiers didn't have gas masks. The ones who did were poorly made. Once the gas was turned off, German forces marched forward to the front lines. From German soldiers said, when I saw the place, it was dead. All deaf birds falling from the sky, dropping dead. Interesting. And this is not an EU outfit. This is my smoking jacket, which I wear usually on my live streams. I feel like our country is on the verge of a civil war, and I kind of feel that we need to go ahead and get rid of the bad blood. Nah, I don't think so. People love to talk about how politically divided America is, but it was more divided in the 1960s. It was certainly more divided during the Civil War. America is politically polarized, and it's quite frightening how politically polarized it is. It's not a good thing. But the idea that the United States is on the verge of a civil war is not the case. Just because you have violence and riots and peaceful protests all mixed together, and you have ICE raids, and you have immigration questions, and you have clashes between the police or the government or the FBI and protesters and anarchists and Antifa doesn't mean necessarily that the United States is heading towards a civil war. We don't need a civil war every time something goes awry. So, tell me what happened in 1939. Well, Matt, that's the year that Hitler invaded Poland and started what I consider to be the Third World War. Keith, I do believe in God, but I don't say which God. I don't share my religious or personal beliefs here on the channel. I try to be as objective as I can, except when sharing my opinions about history. How many senators would you both recognize and allow him to attack someone? Well, I would recognize most senators. I think you're referring to Senator Alex Padilla of California, the senior senator of California, who assailed DHS Secretary Kristen Noem when she was giving a press conference at the FBI field office in Los Angeles. He insisted on asking a question, even though he had no form of identification. People did not recognize him, and so security hauled him away and put the cuffs on him for a little bit. Eventually, they let him go, and it has become a huge rallying cry for the Democrats that a Hispanic senator was assaulted by DHS in the middle of the ICE raids. According to Secretary Noem, both him and her had a conversation behind closed doors for 15 minutes and had a real dialogue, and Padilla has instantly turned around and said that did not happen. He was attacked, and the full video shows that he basically would not stop advancing. He was detained by the and I think it's a bad look for both sides. A senator of the United States should, even if he doesn't have security pins, should not be handcuffed, and a senator should also not act like that. So, yeah. Once the gas was turned off, the German forces, okay, I've already read that. In the UK, a prime minister can be voted out. Is that not the same in the USA? Yes, democratic elections. The prime minister in the UK is probably closest to the Speaker of the House of Representatives in the United States, and although the Speaker of the House in the US is chosen by the party members, it's the same thing in Great Britain with their prime minister as well. So, let me see. Tell us about Hitler. What do you want to know about Hitler? What in particular? The Austrian painter who obviously was one of many anti-Semites who used anti-Semitic, nationalistic, and militaristic objectives, scapegoats, lies, and manipulation to control people through passionate speeches, controlling of the press, and manipulation of the government. He rose to power, then did not let a crisis go to waste, such as the Reichstag bombing, which allowed him to pass the Enabling Acts, which gave him full political power, eventually became both Chancellor and President of the German Republic, making him Der Führer of what became known as the Third Reich, basically better known as Nazi Germany. There you go. And through his militaristic aggression, Germany got closer and closer to World War until their invasion of Poland brought them into the World War that I technically believe already was going on since Japan invaded China. And no, you do a backflip. Good answer about the present-day civil war about to happen. Yeah, there's no civil war coming. Things are not great, but they're frustrating, and they're difficult, and they're confusing. And we here are doing our best to report the news and give historical perspectives. If you want to read about LA's history of riots and how this is just par for the course, go back and read my Substack article. It is true that a governor usually has to call for the National Guard, or a mayor has to do so, but both in the history of President Trump himself and in the history of the United States, it is not uncommon for a U.S. president to use military force or the National Guard even without the permission of the governor. The last time that a sitting U.S. president called in the National Guard without the permission of a sitting governor of a state was in 1965. Yes, that was 60 years ago, but the circumstances make sense. President Lyndon Johnson called in the National Guard to stomp out racist rioters in Selma who were assailing African Americans in their protest march from Selma to Montgomery in the summer of 1965. So that, obviously, the Alabama governor, the racist George Wallace, wasn't about to allow National Guards to disrupt his rioters, and President Lyndon Johnson overrode that idea. So there is a historical precedent for that. Riots in LA have seen the National Guard called in. George H.W. Bush did so in 1992 with the Rodney King riots. And thirdly, Donald Trump's own history shows a proclivity to do this based on political strategy. One of the biggest criticisms that Trump faced from his very own base was not calling in the National Guard to stop the George Floyd riots in Minneapolis in summer of 2020. Many people saw that as a sign of weakness, that he did not want to do that because Governor Walz, who was Kamala Harris's vice presidential pick, didn't want him to do that. The fact that Trump didn't call in the National Guard in Kenosha a month later led to more criticism by MAGA. And then there's January 6th. January 6, 2021, Trump authorized the use of 10 to 20,000 National Guardsmen in Washington, D.C., worried about an insurrection or a riot or whatever you want to call it that eventually did happen. representatives and the mayor, Muriel Bowser, refused the president's wishes, declined that. And so basically, Trump was criticized later for not bringing in the National Guard, and now he's being criticized for bringing in the National Guard. He can't win whatever he does in that circumstance. And I'm not a big, huge fan of him. I don't use this channel as a platform to defend him. I just find it kind of interesting that the historical precedent and the Trumpian precedent both show reasons why he would call in the National Guard to Los Angeles to quell rioters in the face of everything that's happened, both in his own history, the history of Los Angeles, and the history of riots in this country in general. That doesn't mean a civil war is about to happen because the National Guard is being brought in to quell rioters. It has happened on many occasions throughout this history, both with and without the permission of local authorities. It's not that big of a deal. And it would make total political sense for Trump to rally his base and show them that he isn't going to mess around and call in the National Guard when he didn't do so in Minneapolis. And it also makes sense for him personally to override the wishes of Democratic leadership when they themselves excoriated him for not bringing in refused the National Guard in 2021 on January 6th, and then excoriated him and claimed he never wanted the National Guard, which actually ended up not to be true. So there you go. And Stephen, I don't share exactly where I went to school, but I have a bachelor's and a master's. So I just thought I would address the riot thing really quick. So no, he couldn't be voted out early. A lot of people are worried about him being killed in office, though. Do you think we're a republic or a democracy? I personally think we're compatible. They're compatible. People confuse democracy with direct democracy. We are compatible, which is why we are a constitutional democratic republic, where you have democratic elements such as the direct election of senators and governors, but you also have republican elements like leaders in multiple branches of government making multiple decisions, and checks and balances and things like that. So normal people can't recognize most senators. That's fair. I'm not saying it's impossible for them not to recognize him, but he's been on the news for a long time. He was famous because he was the senator who replaced Kamala Harris. He's the first Hispanic senator in California's history. They should have known who Alex Padilla was and what he looked like, and they should have allowed him to go ask his question. Let me see here. Interesting. Thank you, Clyde, for sharing that story. Why did America not want to go to war against Vietnam? The Americans did want to go to war originally, but when the war turned out to be unwinnable and when the U.S.'s actions seemed to be half-hearted and actually supporting a stable, responsible, non-corrupt government in South Vietnam and actually destroying the North Vietnamese army, the U.S. people turned on it. And with the media being completely against the war, the Vietnam War became extremely unpopular, and eventually people stayed out of the draft, refused to go fight, and the whole apparatus fell apart. I might, but it's not going to be the lecture tomorrow. It'll be the lecture on Sunday. Vietnamese are indeed scary and tough and strong when they fight. Just look at what they did to the French from 1945 to 1954. Yes, that's true. Trump should never have called for the arrest of Newsom. Yeah, but everything was pretty much under control until Trump called in the National Guard Plus, and never has Marines been used in the American citizens. That's crazy. He was calling to attack you in the United States. Yes, as far as I know, Marines have not been used. National Guard and some other paramilitary troops have been used. Things were not under control. They were not under control before the National Guard was called in. So, let me see here. Thank you, Noel, for your love from India. Virginia, hello. When they found out the Gulf of Tonkin was a false flag of Venezuela. That's true. The Gulf of Tonkin was a lie. Lyndon Johnson knew it was a lie, yet he allowed it to happen so that the war would be able to expand. And there's a rumor that John F. Kennedy was killed. That's one of the major theories surrounding his death, not by the hands of Lee Harvey Oswald, but by the hands of the CIA, who wanted to expand the war in Vietnam. I'm not sure what the lecture will be this Sunday. Great Awakening sounds good. I'm not saying that there was no rioting. I'm just saying LAPD had everything under control. They were dealing with all the rioting. No, they didn't. There was no curfew. None of that was in place until after the National Guard showed up. Saying you don't need the National Guard and then putting in a curfew the next night proves that you needed the National Guard. So, and Diem was removed by the CIA. Yes, they put up a bad dictator, then they removed him. The United States did not know how to actually bring about a fair and reasonable administration in South Vietnam. And I am drinking tea. This is home brewed tea. This is green tea. I infused it with cinnamon, nice flavor, all of that good stuff. What LHO thing? You would know about the LA riots. It's almost like it's right on your doorstep. No, not necessarily. It's right out it's on everyone's TV. I don't need to go outside my doorstep to see what's happening. I can just turn on my TV and I get the news showing it. So I don't reveal my age or any personal information. I try to keep it as private as possible. Maybe if you join and we get some members going, I might actually have a more personal live stream Q&A where I answer questions for my moderators, people who become members and all of that, where I reveal more personal details and information about me. I just posted my Substack, my master's thesis, so you can go read what I got my master's in specifically. I live in LA and it's got bad. I'm not fond of Trump, but he made a good call. I agree. I think that's fair. So, feisty? What do you mean feisty? Hello, Nawab. Egypt is older, Iran. Egypt is technically older. The civilization there is older. The Persian civilization has existed for thousands of years. Nonetheless, modern-day Iran was a derivative of the term Aryan, which is what the British and the French believed dwelt there, and that name was applied after that area was divided up following the end of the Ottoman Empire. Yes. Yoshi, I do leave my house. I actually just came from running errands, so that's why I'm here later than I usually am. Usually I'm here at 6 p.m. Eastern, but we're here at almost 8 p.m. Eastern, so yeah. What's the topic? Anything you want. It's an Ask Me Anything about history, social studies, and the like, so for the next 20 minutes or so, I will be answering all of your questions regarding social studies. Drop a topic or a question you would like in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer them. This is the Friendly Neighborhood History channel, where we bring you history in a friendly, neighborly manner. So yeah, let's see here. Ars, I don't know if that's I think that the Great Awakenings both are interesting topics, and talking about both of them would be good for a live stream lecture, so maybe we'll do that. Is the U.S. fascist? No. Nobody even knows what a fascist is anymore. So I don't like that. The common accusation against President Trump is that he's a fascist. And Trump has made this accusation against Democrats, who are certainly not fascist either. It's this idea of any government that shows what they believe to be authoritarian power is a fascist. Donald Trump is not a fascist. Sorry, hate to break your bubble, but he's not. Do you think the war in Ukraine, do you think Russia's winning? No, I don't think Russia has been winning at all. I think Russia is a paper tiger in many ways. They're just dangerous because of their nuclear capabilities. What are the for against for the Sonderwag theory in Germany? I don't know what the Sonderwag theory is, so I'm not sure. No, Yoshi, I don't want you to leave. I like having you here. You're creating good vibes in the chat. What's your favorite weapon of history? Do you have modern firearms? I don't have a modern firearm to my own person, which would make me very British and less American. But the truth of them, 330 million people, 350 million guns? One of these things is not like the other. Yes, Dios, please explain to me how he is a fascist. I do like your Latin name. Divinos, divine God of God. It's literally what you mean. Your name means. What's your favorite weapon of history? Do you have a modern? Favorite weapon? Oof, a scabbard. A rapier, one of those weapons from a curved sword from the 19th, 18th, 17th century in Europe. Why is Trump not a fascist? No, the burden of proof is on you to prove that he is one, not for me to prove that he's not. This is not a love Trump fest, by the way. I think it was really stupid to call for Newsom's arrest. I think it was stupid to send in the Marines. I think deporting people who have lived here for a long time is asinine and doesn't even fit with America's long history of immigration, which I probably do need to talk about on the live stream lecture this Sunday. Anyways, sorry, Hars, because nobody knows how immigration works in this country, both legal and illegal, over the last 2.5 centuries, although I have done a live stream lecture on Ellis Island that you should all go check out. And I think my long-form video on Monday will be the history of American immigration, because it's definitely controversial. So yes, a lot of the things Trump is doing, I either personally or historically find abhorrent. That doesn't mean I think he's a fascist. I don't like anything that makes me have to defend the man. So you made the statement to so support your statement. Okay, so fascist dictators are usually democratically elected. True. Fascist dictators have a habit of seizing power. Trump hasn't done that. Fascists tend to be racist, and Trump has his problems there, but he's not necessarily a racist. Fascists promote heavy militarism and conquering of other nations. Trump has actually become more of an isolationist, which doesn't fit with the fascist agenda. So, there's several ways in which Trump fails the fascist test. Nunchucks are cool. I used to have a pair of nunchucks, and I am a history teacher. Can you say 3 things that are bad about Woodrow Wilson? Racist, lied about getting involved in the war, created the Fed. There you go. How can I get reliable news about the U.S.? I would say in this day of age when the media is controlled by corporate interests and different political sides, you should read both left-wing and right-wing sources that are clearly left or right-wing. Don't go to them, or even go to the mainline sources. Go to the APs of the world and things like that. I just don't think that even the news media that says it's supposed to be moderate is moderate anymore. Thought on No King's Day protests. Obviously, people are allowed to protest, and they should definitely be allowed to protest at the Trump rally, the 250th military parade. The president is allowed to commission a military parade. I understand the reason for it. Presidents don't usually do it, but every time Trump does something presidents haven't done, everybody acts like it's a bad thing, and I don't know why, because every president does something new that other presidents haven't done, like the president before Trump being, and all of his problems hiding his health. So I don't know, ground news is good. I would love to find a sponsor that's actually one of these news sources that doesn't just deliver the news, but also shows you different perspectives on the news and tells you exactly how biased or fair the news article you're reading is. And there are some that do that, and I think ground news is one of those. But yeah, Seth, that's my best suggestion. People are allowed to protest. People are allowed to have a No King's Day protest. Wherever they want. I think it's silly. I don't think Trump is a king. I think people would be perfectly happy if Joe Biden or Barack Obama were using their executive power to do certain things. And the fact that Donald Trump is doing the exact same thing angers them because they hate him and his policies, not because they actually are opposed to an executive doing executive things. So yeah, there are no kings, and Trump is not a king. Maybe Trump probably likes to style himself as a king, and he definitely sees himself as using the bully pulpit of the presidency to get whatever he wants. But I'm sorry, there's too many constitutional strictures in place to actually have a king in this country. Is the power of the president increasing exponentially over the last century, and probably at an alarming rate, especially for what the founders would have considered? Yes. Does that make the president a king? No. So yeah. Thanks. I appreciate that. I think John Adams betrayed the ideals of a constitution in our nation, though. The Sedition Act shouldn't be revered as much as the other founding fathers' thoughts. Yes, John Adams loses a lot of clout as a founding father because he screwed up with the Sedition Act. The Alien and Sedition Acts, where he basically said that people couldn't criticize the government, curtailed free speech and free press, and he suffered for that. So even the founding fathers struggled with understanding the Constitution and the First Amendment. So there you go. Let me see. Horace, that's not fully true. The Fed did hurt the money supply, which did help cause the Great Depression, but it wasn't the only reason. Yeah, I do my best to be as best of a teacher to you guys as possible. The Capitol wasn't in D.C. and the House wasn't complete when George Washington was in office. Is that a trick statement? No, Steve, you're trying to trip me up. Martha Washington never went to the Capitol that was named after her husband. There you go. An apparent joke. I like that. In no way affiliated. Like Trump isn't always right, obviously, by the amount of unbiased news is disgusting. Yoshi, I think I would agree to some extent. The news actually makes Trump look better than he actually is. Virginia's head is exploding. I don't know why. Do you think India and Pakistan will figure out an agreement to stop the tensions between them? No. What is my political party? I don't share my political party here on the channel. But it's cool, but I know Spanish. Explain to Rodolfo why the Federal Reserve had too many issues early on and caused the Great Depression. The inability to regulate the money. So in the Great Depression, banks closed because the loans were called in. People were buying on margin. The credit lines were absolutely astronomical and abominable. When banks asked for more money, the Fed created an austere monetary policy, refused to release funds proper to the banks, and the banks failed. So an austere monetary policy is actually part of the reason why the Great Depression happened. And yes, the panic selling was crazy too, from the UK. But what I like about Trump is he puts the people of the USA first, and not the people of the UK. Can you tell me about Italy and the Mussolini area? I don't understand it pretty well. It's great to see you, Amar. You always ask such great questions. But Virginia never explained why her head's exploding. But basically, Amar, Italy was part of a triple alliance with Germany and the Austro-Hungarian Empire before the Great War. In 1915, it went back on this and joined the Allies, France, Great Britain, and later the United States. Because they won, they were expecting huge territorial gains, which was common for European powers when they won a war. When they didn't get quite what they were thinking for, the people rebelled, the economy crashed, and the economic downturn of the 1920s, Italy's seeming regression compared to the other imperial powers of Europe, led a lot of people to embrace a more nationalistic Italy that was militaristic, aggressive, and restoring the glories that harken back all the way to the Roman Empire. And the best example of this was Mussolini, who used this as an opportunity to gain attention, and then using a group of political activists called the Black Shirts, who were thugs, beat up anybody who was opposed to him. He took the idea of fascism from a axe held together by a bundle of sticks, a collective symbol meaning of military might, the fasce. And so that's where they became known as the Fascist Party. And eventually, with a daring, bold move called the March on Rome, Mussolini was able to seize power and basically outlaw all political parties and terrorize any potential opponents in the Italian parliament. With the blessing of the king and even the Vatican, he assumed more and more power till he became Il Duce, the leader of Italy. And he basically promoted Italian nationalism. He tried to finish the conquest of Ethiopia, which is in 1935. He assimilated Albania and Macedonia, tried to build up a Roman Empire in Illyricum and Dalmatia, in what is now which is now part of former Yugoslavia, areas like Slovenia, and had an extensive and powerful, growing militaristic dictatorship that was eventually outshadowed by the Nazis. He doesn't like the Nazis at first, but eventually signs on with them because he respects Hitler's bravado, aggression, and success. And eventually the Americans and the British are able to defeat the Italian army so badly that the Italians throw Mussolini out of power. Eventually they kidnap him and hang him at the end of the war, what I call World War III. So, and no, I am not reading off of ChatGPT. So that's all from my memory. I've talked about it on my channel many, many times. I don't use AI. Once in a while, I'll use an AI image if I don't like the images I have, but very rarely do I ever use anything AI for this channel. I don't use an AI voice. I don't use an AI thing. You're stuck with my voice. You're stuck with my looks. You're stuck with my pictures and my images from history, all of that stuff. Let me see. What would be your solution of the stain on Monica's dress? Too personal, man. What will happen between Israel and Iran? I think things will escalate and then calm down. I really don't think it's going to go anywhere. Do I support the Jews? I support Jews and Gentiles. Yes, I know the UK has a lot of problems with its political structure. The UK political structure is changing completely. And yes, I am just smart like that. So, and sometimes I stare just to concentrate on what I am talking about, Jama. But I love your Courage the Cowardly Dog profile. Stupid dog, you made me look bad. Do you agree that if Herbert Hoover had more federal intervention rather than a hands-off demeanor, the Depression could have had resolved or helped? A little bit, but not fully. FDR's measures of federal intervention did not solve the Great Depression. A war solved the Great Depression. I think Hoover made mistakes. Voluntarism was a stupid idea, but also raising the capital gains tax in the midst of the stock market collapse was a terrible idea too. So, what do you think about the takeover of Islam in the West? What do you mean the takeover of Islam in the West? You mean the rising number of Muslims because of immigration, migration, and high birth rates? We shouldn't immediately see that as a takeover. That shows a nativist bias. So, what was the significant Obama mistake when he was in office? Obama is the main reason that I think the Russians have become so aggressive in Ukraine. Obviously, losing Crimea to Putin was his fault, and I am not quoting my own opinion about him. I have a lot of respect for Barack Obama. I talk about him on this channel. I just did a video about him and his origin story today. You guys can go check out. But I think Barack Obama's foreign policy, the Arab Spring, things like this, the continuation of neoconservatism and neoliberalism destabilizing the Middle East, and the failures of stopping Putin and Crimea. I mean, yeah, his own vice president later said that Obama messed that up. And that's why he struggled with Ukraine when he was president. So, yeah. Let me see here. What about the involvement of Bulgaria in World War II? You mean World War III or what I consider to be World War II? Bulgaria, I don't know much about their involvement during the 40s. I know they were on the side of the Nazis and the Germans in both wars. I don't know why. Why did the old man trip and fall down the well? Because he couldn't see that well. Fun enough. So, why did they kill Mussolini's girlfriend? She had been his lover for a long time, and it was a way of punishing him. Yeah. So I do look up and down, but that doesn't mean that I'm reading something. I actually have a bad habit of looking up to try to remember what I'm going to say. So you support Zionism. I support Zionism and I support Palestinianism. They're not mutually exclusive. Let me see here. Good evening, History Hefner. Good evening, Freshly. Great to see you. What do you think about UK and France turning Muslim? There are more and more Muslims in that area. That's not necessarily a bad thing. World War II, why does that matter? Obviously, the modern world, if you're talking about the World War of the Nazis and Germany and all of that stuff, yeah, that's pretty impressive. And yes, people call me History Hefner because of the smoking jacket. So, yeah. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting some background noise. Why do you support Palestine at Corona? That makes no sense. I mean, Palestine and pro-Zio how? Because I believe that Zionism is at its base core the idea that the Israelis have a right to have their own state made up of a majority Jewish population ethnically and religiously. And that can exist with a two-state solution with the Palestinians having their own state. The Palestinians did not have a state in 1948 when the Palestinian War began. You had the rise, you had an immediate war. The Egyptians controlled Jordan controlled the Golan Heights and the West Bank. The Egyptians controlled Gaza. I mean, these areas were eventually taken over by the Israelis, and the Palestinians were the Arabs who were settled there over time. I just did a story about the different flags of the Palestinian state. If you look at the flag of the Palestinian state in the 1930s, it's a Jewish flag with the Star of David in the middle, and that's because the Jews living in that area were considered Palestinians. There is very little there is a lot, not I shouldn't say very little, but there is a lot that actually combines the Jewish and the Palestinian experience. Their history, their culture, their religions are not too far apart. They're both Semitic peoples, and they both have a right to that state. I have said this before. It is historically valid. Everything I am saying is true. So, what should tax money be used for? I would like, if idealistically, we never know what tax money is for. I would like an itemization of what my tax dollars exactly go to, and maybe even pick what they go to. So, yeah. And let me see here. It's history, it's social studies, it's geopolitics. People bring up all sorts of topics, Yoshi. Yes, Jamal, so were the Israelis. Arabs were, and so were Jews. I don't think the Palestinians specifically were, unless I'm wrong. Palestinians, in my view, are a type of Arabic Semitic peoples that have lived on that land on and off through the centuries, and as such have a right and a tie to that land. But let's be clear about something in history. Just because you have centuries of experience in a land doesn't mean you will stay there and you have a right to it, and that right can never be thwarted or invaded or upended. History changes things. So, if they fought the Ottomans and won, they were promised a statehood, but the Brits F them over. Partially, and that's because not of the Israelis, that's because of the Jordanians. The Hashemites bought that land. That land was supposed to be the second state. That was supposed to be Palestine, the Transjordanian area. Yeah, Yoshi, I find in my historical experience that people use religion all the time to do what they were already going to do anyways, which is seize power and kill people. Religion can be quite the bane of human existence, and it can be quite beneficial to human existence. It's a tool that humans use to express what they were going to do anyways. Yes, there you go. But let me see here. Well, if Hoover vetoed the Smoot-Hawley tariff, what else should he have done? Not raise the capital gains tax and put pressure on the Fed to increase the monetary supply and lower the rates, the interest rates. No, I know that's true, Jamal. They did not. The Jews did not help fight the Ottomans. Not fully. But the Jews, through the Balfour Declaration, the British wanted to give them a state as well. So the Palestinians did fight. That's the Arab Revolt. That flag, the Palestinian flag, is actually the flag of the Arabic Revolt, which did not start in Israel. It started in Mecca in 1916. I think the anniversary just passed, June 10th, 1916. That's the story of T.E. Lawrence and Lawrence of Arabia, by the way. Do you think the British promise for an Arab state after World War I, or what I would call World War II, included the Arab lands in Palestine because they would have to balance this with the promises to the Jews? It did, but then it changed, and there were many different promises that were offered, and both sides turned them down and resorted to violence as a solution. Hoover was in a tricky spot. Do you have any recommendations of what Hoover should have done differently? I don't blame Herbert Hoover for the Great Depression. I think that he could have done more to get the government involved. I think there should have been an SEC. There should have been a bank holiday, certain things, an FDIC. There were certain things that the Roosevelt administration did that were really helpful that he probably should have invested in as well, unemployment insurance being one of them. I know a lot about Germany's involvement in World War II, but not that much about Pacific Theater in Japan. What I would call World War III. So the Japanese actually start by taking over French and Dutch areas. They controlled Indonesia, Indochina. They attacked Burma, trying to get to India. They even attacked Australia, British colonies, after they attacked Pearl Harbor. But because the U.S. would not sell them oil, they attacked Pearl Harbor, and that brought the U.S. into the war. And eventually at Midway, the U.S. was able to turn the tide and then take the fight to them. And through a series of campaigns called island hopping, they seized one island after another, intense, close, hand-to-hand combat that led to the deaths and suffering of hundreds of thousands of individuals over the space of 3 to 4 years. That's not true. Israelis include Jews that are, it includes millions of Arabs. It includes Jews that are Mizrahim, that are Arabic and Middle Eastern, and it includes North African Jews known as the Sephardim. So the one state was announced, the state of Israel, so they ripped out the Palestinians big time. Yes, that's partly true. Every single deal that is true, J-Ma. But it's also true that every single deal offered to the Palestinians for a two-state solution was negated. And when Israel declared its independence, they were immediately attacked. There was no room for a two-state solution on either side. Yeah. And if they had simply just given the Jordanians their land, then there wouldn't be the problems that there are. The Hashemites bought the British over. Would a Jewish state in Germany have worked better? No. The reason that the Jews were basically given Israel, for many reasons, is because there was a continual acknowledgement that they had always been at the cutting edge of discrimination and hatred in Europe. So yeah. Because can I ask, you've probably said, I know you've said it so many times, but what are the world wars you see? So World War I would be the 7 Years' War, or the French-Indian War, and I have a live stream lecture and a long-form video, Yoshi, that you are welcome to go and check out. Then there's World War II, which is the Great War, 1914 to 1918, and then the war we're all talking about would be World War III, that's Germany and Japan. So not everybody uses it. Some other historians believe it. I'm not the first to actually propose that, but I have gone into detail to defend my thesis there. And yeah, I've gone into a lot of detail. So just look up Friendly Neighborhood History, 7 Years' War, and you can see what I mean there. Had Hitler not attacked Russia prematurely, what course would World War II or World War III have taken? I think they would have won. I think the Germans were close to winning the war at that point. The British probably wouldn't have been able to last long. You would have been able to redirect your efforts to the British and probably taken over Egypt. How did Muammar Gaddafi take control of Libya? I'm trying to remember. This is what happens in a lot of African countries. There is a political vacuum following the decolonization process, which was rushed. And if you want to learn more about that, watch my live stream lecture from last Sunday, where I go into detail about decolonization and how the U.S. forced Britain to give up its empire, basically. Harry will really appreciate that if he's watching. So there is a World War II, but World War II is World War III, and the Great War is World War II, and the 7 Years' War is World War I, in my opinion, Yoshi. But yeah, Gaddafi, in that power vacuum, seized power and created a dictatorship, which in the Middle East and in Arabic countries, dictatorships have been really, really powerful and strong. The Afghanis, when they finally became a country, only reacted to a strongman. Yes, free officers coup. And I am from the United States. I don't go into specific where I'm from, and I'm always Eastern Standard Time. Was the eradication of the Prussian identity cultural genocide? No, the Prussians basically tried to force all the other Germans to be Prussian, and basically said because they were a Prussian type of people, the German Empire would be the Prussian Empire extended to control all the German principalities except Liechtenstein and Austria. And thank you, Art and Vane, for subscribing. This goes on the Driving Podcast channels. Love seeing a young man knowledgeable in history. I really appreciate it. That's so kind of you. I'm going to pin that comment. Made my day. No, and Yoshi, you're free to disagree with me. People do all the time, but I do my best to share what knowledge I can. And Anonymous, I really appreciate that. So kind. If you want to help the channel out, like and subscribe. And if you feel like you can, donate and give a perk comment or something like that, and helps the channel grow. We could become a member. We're going to do member lives where I'll go into more detail about myself, and we can have more intimate talks and stuff like that. So yeah, a BA in history, because I've always wanted to teach history, and I'm a history chameleon. The more history I learn, the more I love about it, Steve. So, no, Yoshi, you're allowed to disagree or agree, but you've got my explanation now. 7 Years' War equals World War I. The Great War is World War II. World War II is World War III. Johnson, you shouldn't have done that. Hi, Alpha. And JG, you've got your shout out. Hello to you. Welcome to the Friendly Neighborhood History channel. We've got about 5 more minutes. I usually do these at 6 p.m. Eastern. I will be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern for a Q&A, Ask Me Anything, and then 4 p.m. tomorrow on Sunday, I will have my live stream lecture about the two great awakenings or American immigration. I'll probably put up a poll and let you guys decide. Are there chances of World War III, World War IV, in 2025 because of multiple war fronts going on across the world? Currently, Israel and Iran. So, let me see here. Because of multiple war fronts going on. Yeah, it's possible. I just don't know if it's going to happen. One of my favorite in fact, I see the world just becoming more and more aghast at the chances of a world war, and we're just so unfamiliar with what a world war actually looks like. So few veterans from the last world war are actually still alive that their personal, direct experiences just don't cloud our minds as much. It's secondary hearsay for most of us, even for boomers. So I just don't see it happening. We basically fought a proxy war, the Cold War, throughout much of the 20th century, just so there wouldn't be another world war. So I just don't see it, even with powerful disagreements between Russia, Iran, and China on one side, and the United States, the West, and Israel on the other. One of my favorite all-history scenarios is a very plausible Soviet victory in the Polish-Soviet War. Thoughts on how this would impact World War II or World War III? Yes, Field Marshal Josip Pilsudski, who had the greatest mustache in history. Look him up, and I talk about him on the channel, so you can look him up here. Field Marshal Josip Pilsudski somehow was able to defeat the Red Army. It would have been fascinating to see how far the Soviets and the Bolsheviks would have pushed it to try to spread communism. That was how they tried to do it, and they actually got kind of close, but the Poles were able to hold on to their country land against the invading Russians. That's exactly what they saw. They didn't see communism. They didn't want communism. They wanted to maintain their newfound Polish identity, and that's why they pushed the Soviets out. There are no silly questions, Yoshi. Do you feel like maybe in America you learn things differently than a British person or a German? Absolutely, but I try my best to learn about different perspectives and backgrounds. That's why I love having people from all over the world join us, which they do all the time. How did I know my girlfriend thought I was invading her privacy? I read about it in her diary. Wow, it's kind of dark. When Germany's invaded France, how did they only take it in 30 days? Going around the Maginot Line helped. Where are you on surrounded? Not sure. What happens with Iran? I think Israel and Iran will escalate, and then the threat of the United States getting involved in the war will bring Iran back. Trump has already indicated he wants to make some sort of deal with the Iranians, so I just don't see it going farther than it has. Basically, the way Trump is trying to manipulate Middle East policy is, I have this angry dog on a leash named Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm going to let him off the leash unless you play ball. And he said that to the Palestinians, and he said that to the Iranians. And Israel is killing more people in Gaza, which that needs to end immediately. And now is attacking Iran as well, because Iran is retaliating. So they're messing around. Let's see if they find out, like the Trump administration likes to say. How did the Prussians perform so well in the Franco-Prussian War? The man of iron, Otto von Bismarck, turning Germany into a manufacturing industrial machine, made them that powerful. Germany has always had a huge population, extremely good military tactics, and large amounts of resources that have always benefited it. Germany has always been on the cutting edge of military tactics and has always had huge advantages in military conflicts. In the Franco-Prussian War, which destroyed the French Empire of Napoleon III, nephew to Napoleon Bonaparte, the one we all know, was pretty incredible. I like how you do USA, USA with an Israeli flag. It's kind of telling. Why are they attacking? The Israelis are attacking Iran because they're worried Iran is getting to the point where they enrich their uranium to a certain level that it could become toxic and volatile, and they could get a nuclear weapon. And if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, they've been pretty clear about using it either on Israel or the United States, which they see Israel as an extension of the United States anyways. So what I don't get is that Trump claimed Iran spoke to him, and then Iran flies missiles a couple hours later. Mainly because Israel attacked Iran, and the United States tried to keep Israel from doing that, and Israel did it anyways, knowing that the United States will not back off its support from Israel because of the large Jewish and democratic and historical connections between the US and Israel. Do you think the European Union will ever become a federation? No. Using Benji as a barking dog might not be a bright idea. It's one of these things where it's carrot and stick. The carrot is you get trade deals and economic investment in the United States like the Qataris do. The stick is you get Netanyahu and the Israelis and the Iron Dome is your barrier you have to break. So, what role? I don't know what Trump lies I'm saying. I've been fairly critical of a man. Just watch the earlier part of this live stream. What role did Germans play in the fall of the Roman Empire? Different German barbarian tribes, such as the Vissa and Ostrogoths and the Alemanni and the Lombards, flooded through when the waters froze over into Roman territories like Gaul, Spain, and northern Italy and conquered them. That's the main reason that that happened. And you can learn all about that by watching my most recent long-form video, The Fall of Rome. Anonymous, I do believe in God. I don't specify what God that is. I don't talk about my religious beliefs too much, or my political beliefs for that matter, but I have to believe in some sort of higher power. The world makes more sense to me if I do, and I don't fault anyone for not believing or not knowing. So anyone and everyone is welcome. And at that, we're going to sign off. We've been going for actually over an hour because we started earlier and went for 15 minutes. Go check that out if you haven't. Like and subscribe, all of that great stuff. I'm going to head out. It's so good to see everybody. Thank you for joining us. And I will answer one more question. It looks like it's Amar's question. Do you think the European Union is a good idea? And another question, do you think the European Union will expand to cover all of Europe? It's in regression right now. A lot of people are turning their backs on the European Union. I think it's a really good idea, but we have to understand that we have become so used to supranationalism, the idea that a bunch of international organizations and governments need to work together, that we have never even asked ourselves what is so good about it. It's a holdover from the Cold War that the US created supranationalistic organizations like the UN and NATO to tie Europe and the West to the United States. And now a lot of people on the right don't know why the justification is for that 35 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall. So what type of intel training I have to answer Gaia Hans because it's great to see him. What type of intel training did the American soldiers receive right before the Normandy landings? Last second intel told to go storm the beach under a volley of machine gun gunfire. Grim, yes, it did. The Germans were just about to find out that they were landing on Normandy. It was now or never because they had tried to deceive them. Patton had set up a bunch of decoys thinking they were going to invade at Calais, which is the closest point, so they went to Normandy instead. Would I ever consider a mustache? I could try. I don't know how good it would look. But yeah. Arif, hello. Thank you everyone for joining us and taking care. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys again tomorrow, 1800 hours Eastern time. Thank you, Arvind. It's so nice what you said. There probably is. We just don't know what they are. But yes, I'm glad you love history, and I will see you all tomorrow, and then check out the long form and short form content. I have short form dropping every day, long form every Monday and Friday at 8 p.m., although this one's going to be delayed. And then, of course, the live stream Q&A tomorrow, and then Sunday, my live stream lecture, which will probably be, I don't know, we'll have to figure that out. It's going to be something. All right, take care, have a good night, and remember, love history. Bye-bye now.